Hello everybody and welcome to the channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new here, please take time to click on like and subscribe. Make sure you drop a comment below. Today we're going to be building a single step footstool. Just a small quick project. I'm going to burn up some leftover wood I have from another project I had, so we're going to make this one out of walnut. And I'm going to show you how to make it. So the first thing I want to do is grab a piece of lumber here. I want my step to be 8 inches high by 12 by 7. And the first thing I'm going to do is nip off the end of this wood here, so I've got a nice clean edge to cut on. Now the lumber is rough on both sides. As you can see, it's got like a piece of a live edge on that side. The other side's got a small little rotted live edge on it. So I'm going to straighten this up a little bit more on the table saw and back to the chop saw later on. But right now, I'm just getting a rough cut, and I'm actually going to cut this about 12 and a half, 13 inches. That way I've got a little bit to square it off on the end once I get it cut down to the size I want. My next cut's going to be for the legs. Again, I want this to stand 8 inches tall. I'm going to plane it down to 3/4 of an inch. So I've cut this piece off right around 15 inches. I'm going to cut both legs at the same time. So I cut it at 15 so I can cut 7 1/4, 7 1/4 later and make two nice straight cuts. Now I want my base to be wider than my top step. So I'm going to end up making the top step 7 because that's what I had left over. And then the base of my leg here will be 8 inches and it will taper into about 6.5, just so it's got a nice little look to it. You can make it your 6 inch or however you want. It's more of a eyeball thing than it is anything. You don't want it too small because you don't want the stool to wobble, but you definitely want the base of it as wide or wider than your step itself to keep it more balanced. So after I've got my long piece cut down to 8 inches wide, I've also got a small scrap piece you'll see pushed through here. This is a leftover piece from another job. Basically, I'm going to take it and I'm going to cut it down for support for the step. I'm going to just basically cut off whatever's left over. You can make it 1.5 inches, 2 inches, whatever you want. Mine's pretty close to 2 inches, which is what I normally do anyhow. So I'm just going to cut off the rough edge of it and use what I've got there to make a support for the step. You'll see where that comes in handy later. Onto the planer, I'm going to cut these down to 3/4 of an inch. As you can see, I've only got 3 pieces going through because I haven't cut my steps in half yet. Again, I want to cut those at the same time. That way I can lay them on top of each other. Make sure they're the exact same height. That way I don't have any wobbles at the end of it. And we're just going to push these boards through until they're pretty much down to 3/4 of an inch. Now, if you were starting with a better piece of lumber than I did, you can do this probably in 1 cut or 2 cuts at the most. But since I started with that rough piece of lumber and it was kind of angled to start with the live edges on it, I'm going to cut this down to a little bit over my 7 1/4. And since I've got 3/4 inches, I've got 7 1/4 inches high. My top plate is 3/4 of an inch, so that's how I get 8 inches tall. I'm going to go ahead and cut this one side off. And I'm just going to cut these even. I'm not cutting my angle in yet. You can cut your angle in if you want to, but I'm going to cut these even. As you can see, I've got them squeezed together so they don't slide apart. And I'm just getting 2 straight edges and making these both 7 1/4 inches tall. Now once that is done, I'm flipping them the other way so the grain structure is going towards me now, or up and down for more support. We don't want to run our grain sideways on our side legs. They're more likely to break that way than they are up and down. And again, I'm going to make me a 5-degree angle here. And I'm just going to cut at 5 degree at about 3/4 of an inch in on both sides and down to the bottom corners. Over the table, I'm going to mark the center of this board so I can cut my notch in here. Now you don't have to cut a notch in here. You can cut an arch in here. You can cut a heart in here. You can cut a V in here. Whatever you want. I find it looks pretty nice with a half circle in the bottom of them. Most people seem to like that, but you can make this a little V cut if you wanted to. A little A cut in there, whatever you want. Now you can clamp these at the table if you want to, or if you don't have a drill press. I just find it easier to put on the drill press. That keeps my piece in one place, and that way it doesn't slide around on me, and I've got a nice better cut. But before I got the drill press, I just put these on the edge of my table, clamped it, and cut them out the same exact way. The next step is optional also, is rounding it over. You can put a 1/4 inch round over, 3/8 inch round over, you can put a tapered edge on it. You can round this over however you want. You don't have to round over at all. I just think since it's a step stool, you want to round it over so if you stub your toe or hit your foot or something on it, it's going to be less painful with a little rounded over edge than straight over. But again, completely optional. Do what you want to with it. And on to everyone's favorite process, which is sanding. This takes probably 15-20 minutes to sand these small pieces. Sand them with a 120 grit. You can do 220 if you want to. If it was a cutting board or something like that, I might do 220 just to tighten the grain up a little bit. But since it's a footstool, I want to soak in the oil really well. That way it has a nice color to it. On the assembly process, as you can see, I've got a square here. I'm going to measure in the same distance on both sides, which is 2 3/4 to the center of this board. So I'm basically just going to glue the end of it. We're going to put screws in this also. So you want enough glue on here that it adheres, but you don't need to squish out all over the place. You don't want to make a big mess with it. And I'm going to clamp it from both sides first, then I'm going to clamp it down the middle. So once I get this squared up on both sides, again, I'm going to double check it. Then I'm going to put the clamps on both sides, squeeze them in gently, and then put one clamp down the center. And once I get this clamped, I want to make sure I take a wet towel and get all the glue squish out. Glue squish out on walnut looks horrible once you try to oil it or anything with it. So try to get as much off now as possible. A lot less sanding later on. Now with my center clamp on, I've got a place where I can release both the clamps on the sides, and I can get in there and clean it a little bit better if I have to. And I'm going to put those back on again once I get everything cleaned out and get all the glue off of it. Now the glue is pressed in between the two pieces of wood. If you've got it in there straight, you can get this a little bit more wet than you normally would if you've got glue up in the crack. I just take like that little screwdriver you can see on the bottom of the screen and put it on a wet paper towel and just, again, get the glue out. Globs of glue on this looks terrible. Now after a couple hours, I'm going to pull the middle clamp out and I'm going to go ahead and put my screws in. You can do this earlier if you want to. I always like to give it at least a couple hours for the glue to set properly, or at least start to set really good. Normally within 15 minutes you can't knock these plates off without breaking the wood, but again, a couple hours, let it set, leave the clamps on, and then we're going to screw these in. I'm going to use a countersink bit, so when I drill these in, I can put little plugs in there or button caps on there. If you wanted to, you could actually just do a 3/8 inch hole and you could run a dowel into here. I would definitely pin it somehow, whether it be a dowel or whether it be screws. That way you've got some better support there than just glue. That little bit of glue technically would probably hold 100, 150 pounds once we put the step on it. But again, better safe than sorry. And once I get that done, I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing on the other side of it. And while I'm doing this, I've got the CNC running over here, as you can see, making the plugs. So we make the plugs also. We also make our own dowel rods. I'm going to put a little bit of glue in the hole, a little bit of glue on the plug, and then take a hammer and tap these in. And then we're going to come back and cut them off later once they're dry. I'm going to run a bead of glue across here, and I want to make sure that I get the glue on there. Again, kind of like we're doing the side parts, we want to make sure the glue is thick enough that it bonds, but we don't want glue squish out everywhere where we're cleaning up for an hour or trying to go back later and sand things off. Once I put the step on here, it's hard to see on the camera, but I'll actually slide this thing forward and backwards, left and right a little bit to make sure the glue is dispersed properly. Or at least the way that I want it. It'll basically cover everything that needs to be covered. I've also got my stool set, so I've got a 1/2 inch overhang on both sides. So I'm going to make sure I've got this nice and even once I do that. And if you let this set for 2 or 3 minutes before you move it again, once you've got it even, the glue will start to tack up and it won't slide all over the place when you're putting your clamps on if you're having problems with it sliding around on you. So I'm going to start putting the clamps. I'm going to start by putting them on in the center. I can hold this with my hand and keep it from sliding left and right. That first clamp's not on tight yet. It's just on there to keep it from moving. Once I get that done, I want to start cleaning up my glue as it squishes out. So I'm going to clean up anything that comes out right away, and anything from where I slid it back, forth, left, and right to get the glue seated everywhere. As I put the clamps on and tighten them down, more glue will squish out. So you can wait till the end to do this, but again, I just find it easier to keep it clean as I go. More clamps, more glue squeeze out, pretty much rinse and repeat. Put a couple more clamps on this side. By the time you get the last couple clamps on, you should be about done with your glue squish out. And you want to make sure you keep these clamps on the outside edges. That'll keep your wood from bending or warping any. If for some reason you had any problems with the wood, the most likely place you'll get gaps are on the corners of those. But if you leave this clamp for about 4 hours, you shouldn't have any problems. And although I've got a nice clean fit underneath, I'm going to go ahead and put one board under the middle here like that and just clamp it down to keep support along the middle of it also. I'm normally not going to put screws down the middle of the stool, but you can if you feel like it. And here I'm just measuring up and in. I'm going to measure 2 inches in from both ends, and I'm going to measure inward to the point where I'm in the middle of the step and drill my holes at 2 inches at the middle of the step. And then we're going to recess those like we did on the side part. So again, we've been about 4 hours now on our weight. I still haven't taken the clamps off all the way yet. I've just removed some. That way I can put my screw holes in here. And again, we're going to leave this clamped probably for another 2 hours after the screws are done. Maybe an hour, even though you don't have to. I still like to let it set for quite a while. Grab us a few more plugs, fill the holes. Plug our holes up, and then we're going to take a saw and we're going to cut these off after the glue dries, or at least tacks up really well. We don't want to pull these back out of the holes. This little saw here has probably cut me more than anything in the shop. Extremely sharp, and will cut into you with a little teeny tiny nick. And once we get everything cut off, I'm going to just wipe this off a little bit because again, that was a little bit damp still with the glue. Again, my plugs are super tight. I have to hammer them in place, so I'm not worried about them popping out. We're going to go back and sand this, make sure everything's smooth, make sure our plugs are flush with the surface. Look for any dents, divots, cracks, scratches, blemishes, and get them all sanded out. Then the last thing to do is clean up that excess glue that's down in your cracks and crevices. You don't have to do this. This is up under the stool. As you can see, I don't have hardly any at all to clean. If you see any other burrs, or just run your hands along it, if you feel anything rough, go ahead and knock off anything that's rough on there. Once you're done sanding and you're satisfied, it's on to either putting on a poly, an oil. You can wax these. You can do whatever you want as far as finishing them. You can leave it unfinished if you want. I'm just going to use this feed and wax. You can get it at your box store. It's basically mineral oil and beeswax. As you rub it in, it just really brings out the shine in your product, and it goes on fast and easy for bigger pieces of furniture versus using a board butter or something like that. If you've got time and patience, the board butter does about the same thing, but this just dries just as good. Doesn't leave a film on it. After a couple of days, you can sit on it. Won't leave oil on your clothes or anything like that. It doesn't stay slippery. But it doesn't, like, if dust gets on or something, you can wipe the dust right off of it. So it's a really good product for not a whole lot of money and gives you a really good finish. Now you could polyurethane this or shellac it or something like that, and the finish would last forever. We just try not to use chemicals that we don't have to here, and try to keep our stuff family friendly, family safe, pet friendly, pet safe for the most part. We do some projects, but we always tell you what we're using in them. Some of the cutting boards, we do a couple epoxy fills and things like that, which most of the time the epoxy can be safe, but you have to be really careful with your epoxies too. If you read on epoxy, most of the time, even if it says food safe or food grade epoxy, there's also stipulations that if the epoxy doesn't cure properly, which there's no way probably of you telling without some sort of a instrument, it could still be hazardous, dangerous. So I just try to avoid those if I can. And that's all there is to putting together a little single footstool. Again, this is about 8 inches tall, 12 inches wide, 7 inches across for your step part. And one last thing, as you can see, I did not oil the feet. If you've got a carpeted area, if you're selling to somebody who has a carpet, go ahead and oil those feet up. It's not going to slide anywhere. But if you sell this to a customer with a hard surface and you do oil it, even though it doesn't stay oily, it still can be slippery. So a lot of times if I sell these, I'll include small rubber feet with them and like an alcohol wipe or something. So if you do get some oil on the bottom, I always tell the customer, make sure you sand the bottom of these feet and put some rubber stoppers on to keep them from sliding if you're going to go on like a linoleum, hardwood, tile, something like that. Hope everyone enjoyed the video. Please click on like, subscribe, and make sure you drop a comment down below. Let us know whether you like this product or not, whether you see something you think we did right, did wrong, whether you just enjoyed it, helped you out. Just let us know. Helps the channel grow.